Islamophobia and the war on terror is built on crushing and suppressing any Muslim politics.
You would have thought that as a community we had made some progress in becoming more politically astute.
It's that the system only allows certain types of voices and amplifies certain types of voices.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good evening or morning or afternoon whenever you're watching to all of our viewers on the Stand for Palestine podcast. We're delighted that you are joining us once again. And here today in the studio we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Yassir Morsi, who I always said would have been guest number one, but he lives in the lesser of the two Australian cities, for better or worse. So he needs very little introduction to those who sort of listen in these sorts of spaces, but to do justice to who he is a PhD scholar and author, published author of White Skins, Black Masks. I think I got it right, or is it the other way around?
Not even close for
us.
Okay.
No, what am I saying? We've got to start this again. Why am I thinking of Fanon? Okay, it's because he's a great acolyte of the great philosopher Frantz Fanon. So he will tell us the name of his book in a second. I can't believe
That's okay.
That's a blooper, but we'll leave it in just to show that we're authentic. So we'll talk to him about his book just a little bit. I can't believe I got that wrong, bro. That's
it's been a while.
That's horrible. Yeah,
7 years.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think while
Radical
introducing
skin,
you.
moderate masks.
Radical skin, moderate. So I knew you imitated him in some way,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
did. That's right.
Okay, you can't blame me for that one.
No,
So,
I can't.
khair. So he's an author, a writer who is hard to decipher, as are all philosophers and political thinkers. But once you get it, it is profound, and that's why we have him here today to unravel and unpeel some of the important conversations that the community needs to have about all things Islamophobia, Palestine, and where to from here. Sure. Dr. Yassir, with that uncharacteristically long introduction, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you,
Thank
bro?
for having me. Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Finally.
Good to be in, what is it? Good to leave the lesser of the two cities to be here in
Sydney.
Beautiful Bankstown. So, where are we?
We are in Yagoona, which is right next to Bankstown.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're in the heart of the Muslim community. And we're very, very delighted to have you. But I guess, the burning question that everyone in the community is sort of asking, you've done all this thinking and, theorizing, and now it's sort of time for some praxis. Been asked many times, when is Yassir standing for election?
Never.
Yeah.
I don't do elections.
Yep.
I've only ever been involved in one election. That was when I was president of UMIS, which is University of Melbourne Islamic Society. And I think I was the only one running, so I got all the votes. My type of democracy stuck for life.
Sounds like Syria under Bashar al-Assad.
Doubled my term as well.
Alhamdulillah.
No, I'm not standing there.
How are you doing though? All things well?
Alhamdulillah, yeah.
It is a very interesting time to be having this conversation.
Yes, it is.
Do we breathe a sigh of relief or what?
Regarding the ceasefire?
Yes.
We hold our breaths. I think most of us don't trust Israel.
Yeah.
We know the violence is ceaseless, unrepenting, and they'll find one way or another to try to do what Zionism does, and it's built on dispossession, erasure, and I think our prayers and thoughts. Hopefully, it is some breathing space. We all want the bombing to stop, the minimum. But look, we're talking about Israel and Donald Trump here, so no.
One thing that I didn't mention in the intro, but very importantly, your career has taken an interesting turn in the last sort of five to 6 years. You've after your postdoctorate and working and lecturing, you've taken a turn to psychology.
That's right,
and now you're a practicing counselor, psychologist. So from that sort of hat on, how do we even begin to process what's happened here as an ummah, as a community? Like, how does one make sense of what's happened in broad daylight? Yeah,
so the last 4 years I've been working as a provisional psychologist at an Islamic school in Melbourne. Shout out to all the people at AIA. That 4 years, the last 2 have been marked by what's going on in Palestine. It's become difficult, obviously, for all sorts of different reasons. So we know people from Gaza. We know people have lost family in Gaza. We've received students from
I was
Gaza,
going to ask, yeah.
staff. So it's intimate in the sense that we, as a community, all of us know this. We're not too far away from families, people, as well as Palestinians that grew up with us. And broadly speaking, Palestine is a Palestinian issue, but it's also an Ummah issue. So Muslims hold dear to their heart. So it impacted the school in many, many different ways. And I found that so I have two careers, sure, they overlap. The established one is politics and the emerging one is psychology. At times I find politics can be therapeutic if you understand the world around you. Doesn't mean it solves anything, but there is a sense of having a narrative that is, rather than drowning in confusion about what's happening and the way violence works. So that was important. There were times when I think the school, and I don't think this is unique to my school, I think it's a general narrative, where they thought psychs, counsellors, provisional psychs in my case, had the capacity or the ability to make people cope with witnessing a genocide. And that rubbed, I'm going to be honest with you, a little bit vulnerable, that rubbed my politics side the wrong way. I think our rage, our anger, our hurt are natural dispositions, and these are part of our fitra screaming back what's going on. I don't think it depends how you frame it. Of course, we're there. Look, counselling doesn't mean solve the issue. Counselling could mean hold space, provide space, validate, all the rest. But there was a kind of put it into the category of let therapy deal with this, yeah. And I said not unique to my school. I just found that I just wanted to say no to that because and I won't get too far into it. It mimics a lot of the counter-violent extremism stuff. We have these geopolitical grand acts of violence that are cyclical and do significant amount of damage. And then there's stress on the community to fix Muslim emotions as a result of witnessing this. Police Muslim emotions, temper Muslim emotions. The number one emotion that we wanted to temper, especially amongst Muslim men, was rage, anger.
So you see parallels in that?
Yeah, I saw parallels in that. So now we have to temper sorrow, fear, pain, trauma, visceral or otherwise.
So the obvious question is then, what do we do? If so let's say the modern psychological paradigm is doesn't have the answers, and it obviously probably doesn't, right? To something as profound and grievous as this.
So whenever I hear that question, what do we do, in the $64 million question I've been asked my entire career in life by X, Y, and Z, every Ali, Omar, and Mustafa, as well as others, what is the solution? And I'm not saying you're asking that, but typically,
no, I guess to the grief and to the violence that we've experienced.
I know you're not asking that, but whenever I ask that, there's two parts to that. There's a strategy or strategic response, and then there's a response built on principles, whether those principles be spiritual or otherwise. I typically take the second category. Rather than strategize about what we do, sometimes you take a principle position and you speak your truth and you try to tell people around you where the grief is coming from and how you can't resolve it. And the only, submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our test. You will have to, I think we've had this conversation, you and I, before, but one of the most dominant feelings was a sense of helplessness. Our hands tied behind our back. We can't do anything. And the thing that you're asking me to do is not good enough for me. I want to fight. I want to fight any capacity in a way that, it's very, very hard to source dignity from your deen and then ask to park that dignity when you're seeing fellow Muslims be killed in their masses. So the solution, quote unquote, response was to be principled in that and just to call it out. Not to say that calling out in and of itself did anything other than validate. A lot of people have ghosts in the machine. They kind of have half thoughts, unarticulated sentences. They start off, and then when you say something for them, or when somebody says something to you and it clicks, that's what you're thinking, and that has some therapeutic quality to it. I mean, that's all we could do, but also, there was acts of solidarity that in that setting about dealing with grief that helped. Small things at schools, people putting stickers on their laptops, writing on chalk "Free Palestine," putting the flag up around campus, Yeah, and then I've never been in an environment that's 100% Muslim. At least the student body is. You don't get asked to condemn Hamas. You don't get asked to prove your humanity. You don't get asked these questions. So in that sense, the community gathering in and of itself, when you're not continually having to prove something, was helpful. But, there were some horror stories too, not from the school, got to be clear. I think my campus, my school was wonderful.
Amazing.
But yeah, some comments here and there from people around the school probably didn't help. But yeah, it was, I don't think the therapeutic model is a solution to politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about that. And it's a bit of a segue, but I think it's an important one. The limits of modern psychology vis-a-vis the Islamic worldview. How do you sort of, deal with that as a professional psych almost?
Yeah, look, I recently visited some family members in Dubai, right? And I met my brother-in-law, and he introduced me to a friend who introduced me to, I think it was the friend's mother. It was a collegial, beautiful event. There's nothing, and they asked me what I did, what I'm a doctor in, and I said politics, and their face changed, and I got introduced to somebody who does psychology, provision and whatnot. Their face changed, and they gave me a mini lecture. God bless them. I'm not criticizing. I'm reflecting, recalling, and the lecture was like, "Oh, politics is terrible. It's horrible. Stay out of politics. Politics is full of corruption. Stick to psychology. Psychology is helping people and so forth." And I remember walking away thinking, my entire experience studying psychology, doing my internship, has been incredibly political. I've never been so policed at an intellectual level like I have in studying psychology and practicing it. It's such a regulated, and there are moral checkpoints that nobody says out loud. And then there's this arbitrary opera body that's, like it's our ASIO, man. Right? It's staring at you down, and then, you are, I understand there's a reason to protect the vulnerable and so forth, so I'm not going to go too extreme and say it, but it's an incredibly politicized and controlled discipline. And that way, that for me to ask about it, that means as a Muslim dealing with, let's say, Muslim-tainted problems, using Muslim vocabulary. And we move away from a spiritual paradigm, because I've heard about Islamic psychology and all of this.
Yes.
I'm talking about Muslim problems. Yeah? Not an Islamic paradigm for psychology, right?
Sure.
We've inherited certain fractures.
Yeah, such as the genocide happening in broad daylight,
right?
Yeah.
And then you're in this context where most of the time as a therapist, you have to be somewhat neutral, politically neutral, which in of itself is a political position.
Yes, of course.
Right? You can't lead on the client. So it depends on the modality you use and so forth. And sometimes I found myself asking, what is my role here? What is my job here? And I always thought that doing politics could have been something that helped me become a better psychologist in the future. And then I started questioning, well, maybe not. Maybe the opposite. Maybe it's just constantly
You're
making
trapped in a paradigm sort of thing, that you really can't use the language that you would to deal with these problems. Yeah.
But maybe because I'm new as a provisional, and I just started becoming a little bit overthinking it. But in the rapport that you build and the atmosphere of healing that you build as a Muslim, there's something there. Like even just hearing you say something that is very familiar to another Muslim helps. So,
there's also certain concepts that as a Muslim you inherently assume another Muslim to have in his vocabulary when you're talking, right? Like,
but when you say that, right, there is I do this anyway. At a general level, I think it's wiser to do this. You wait for the client to develop their worldview for you.
Right.
Yeah. You wait for their presenting problem. It's a lot more listening than it is speaking. Yeah. And you're right, exactly the point you said. But there's a time where you can't make assumptions. Not that we shouldn't. You just have to wait.
Sure.
It's there, but you just have to wait, because the way they may express it, because something as simple as prayer is foundational to us. But somebody's experience with prayer may be that they constantly feel shame because they feel distant.
Sure.
And my interest is in the shame. My interest is in how that shame is manifest. And with Gaza, like it may be like a helplessness. It may be an anger. We all know we care. But how is your care presenting? And for many different people, it may be silence and avoidance. You may feel like, I don't want to think about it. And then like I have to wait for all of these secondary like registers to come out.
Yeah.
Politically speaking, what you really want to say is we need to unite, we need to create a vocabulary, and so forth. And the therapy session's not for that. But
so you're not prescribing jihad as a solution during your sessions?
Not yet. No, I'm not.
Apra is watching, by the way.
Yeah.
Be careful what you say.
I know you joke like that, right? But let me.
There's a lot of truth to it. It's the obvious elephant in the room, right?
I know you joke like, but like, I've had conversations where the question of violence comes up.
Yep.
And look, at a school, the majority of presenting problems aren't about Palestine.
Yeah.
Right? The majority of presenting problems are those that are in sync with that population's age level. But there are rare conversations, and without breaking confidentiality or anything, and I'm not talking about this school I work at, but at another, the first one, there are conversations that people know people who have gone and lost their lives in Afghanistan, Syria, and Palestine. And there's a stigma around it. Again, without saying too much, I don't want to disclose too much because I've got to protect. Yeah, but everything that I learnt about the war on terror and CVE in Australia, I saw in my sessions firsthand, and its impact on kids. Yeah, and yeah, again, I don't want to go too into it because, but it was there, and like jihad got brought up here and there, not because anybody wanted to do it, because it was part of the Muslim vocabulary and Muslim experience, and part of the contours of the war on terror that shaped many a person's anxiety around being Australian or living in Australia.
Well, talking about that and to take it elsewhere, fascinating, by the way, great insights. Really, really, brings to, I guess, light what many of us feel when we interact with the modern psychological framework, if you will, where many of us even turn to it. Perhaps we've found some use in it, and we all have problems that need to be dealt with. But you can.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no.
I've studied it. I've been on the other side of both sides. Well, in my opinion, and look, it's a very early opinion. Like the senior psychologists out there that you probably want to reference, bro. In my opinion, it's all about rapport. It's about the relationship you build. Like you could get a really bad psych just because you don't click. They don't know how to lean in, lean back.
Yep.
And it's a lot about personality as much as it is about if somebody's too robotic and you're that type of person who doesn't like that, it won't work. So it's all about the atmosphere you create. And I learned, subhanAllah, like just being Muslim in a Muslim space, and you don't have to finish half of your sentence because I know the world you come from. You don't have to tell me about the nature of your the parents that you have or the style, because I'm trying not to assume too much, but I click it straight away. And there's like, there is a lot that's valuable in that. A lot. Like there is like
in the worldview and the relationship.
You and I can have a conversation, Faraz, because we've known each other. We come from the same world, same generation, dealt with the same political atmosphere. Half the stuff that you have to say, you don't need to say out loud to me. And imagine that in that kind of setting. And I'll close on this. When I went to a psych after Christchurch, I'm sure she was a very good psych. She was a white woman, and not racialize her for the sake of it. But she asked me what was wrong, and I was like, oh my God, how do I explain this? Bro, I spoke for 40 minutes trying to give an overview of the community, different actors. Can you imagine trying to speak about Samarkand or something? Right? Just like
community leadership
there, everywhere. I was like, oh my God, and I felt sorry for her. Yeah. And then like there's the internal part of it, and then with the world I've come from and my day job, and the various degrees of Muslim politicalness like, what do you mean by moderate Muslim? Like, yeah, aren't you moderate? Like, I'm like, no. Just trying to explain that.
That's when you walked out and said never again.
Well, like, at the end, she goes to me, politics seems important to you. And I was like, La ilaha illallah. I was like, yeah, so look.
So you clearly didn't start the meeting with your CV in front of her, right?
Like it just felt like, I felt bad for her. Like, not for, like, I don't even know what she was thinking, because she was just like taking notes. But you know when you hear yourself speaking out loud, and you feel like, dude, I sound crazy. I sound.
Well, you're in the right place for a reason.
Right. So I just think being able to bridge those sentences, like
it's a huge thing. It really is a huge thing.
Yeah. So, alhamdulillah, I don't have. Look, I didn't like studying psychology. I don't like practicing majority of it. But that's not to say I wouldn't have done it. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Well, there must be utility to the skills you have gained, but then having that common vocabulary and people not needing to finish those sentences.
Yeah.
And that being the starting point as opposed to this amazing white lady that you ended up with.
Yeah.
Giving a lecture to. So from that sort of micro cosm of the school, and I guess, you know, the relationship of the kids to what's happened and the staff to what's happened. Let's take a step back to the community more broadly. Very interesting moment for, you know, that we're in right now, as like, how do we sort of deal with the aftermath, or inshallah it's the aftermath of a once in a century almost type political event. It's hard to sort of find words to just even come to terms with what's happened. And here, you know, in Australia, we've got a community that's sort of struggling to sort of make sense of how we go about it as well. So, you know, with all of your experience in, I guess, community thought leadership, at times community leadership with the ICV experience and the MSAs and all the rest of it, and the plenty of interactions you've had with different echelons of leaders and political thinkers in our sort of community, I really want to unpack some of the things that have happened today, and dive a little bit into some of the key sort of things that have happened.
Yeah. Look, it's a good question.
I haven't asked the question yet, by the way.
Oh, haven't you?
No, not
Please.
yet. Sorry for the long spiel.
I was finishing
there'll
sentences.
Be many. That's right. There'll be many. There'll be many. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
The people behind the screens are all laughing today, which is good. It's Yassir and I. It's going to be. You got to have some tears and laughter. So, I'm going to ask you a few questions. We're going to go down a few different rabbit holes, and I've been looking forward to this for a while, because we did an episode on another podcast, Boys in the Cave, and it was, alhamdulillah, quite well received. It was a very good discussion on, at the time, an office that had been announced. And I'm going to use that as a departure point. By no means is that the start and the end of the discussion, but I think it's an important point because it represents oh so keenly the gap in the community between where we should be and where, unfortunately, parts of the community are, right? And that's not to say you have figured it all out or anyone has figured it all out. It's just that, you know, you've given justice to politics as both a lived experience and a learning that needs to happen, a deep learning that needs to happen. You know, it's funny why I said black skin, white mask, because my good friend sitting in the studio with us today, he's reading that book at the moment. So he puts up these stories and he's going on that sort of intellectual journey, which, you know, at one point under your guidance, many of us did. And it sort of clicked that this is something that I've been thinking about, like, you know, this literature, this incredible political and discursive journey that needs to be gone on for the community to progress and to have a better way of understanding some of this stuff. Some people just refuse, right? Parts of the community just outright refuse that there is any deeper experience or understanding that can be gained than sort of, you know, whatever they're getting up to, whether that's securing funding for a center or thinking that by denouncing Hamas, you know, they'll progress the cause of the community. So in some ways it feels like we're going backwards 15 and 20 years to even have this discussion. But that's what's been bizarre about this whole thing, right? In some ways is that, you know, you would have thought that as a community we had made some progress in becoming more politically astute. But many of those old bad experiences seem to have cropped up. Is that just me? Or do you actually feel that, at least at the level of positions of power and positions of influence in the community and offices established by our benevolent government, that is the case, that it really feels like, you know, like being stuck in a time warp?
No, I do believe that. I've used a example of the hamster wheel. So one of the arguments in my book, Radical Skin, Moderate Masks. I'm gonna write that down.
Amazing, by the way. Okay. Amazing book. Everyone's got to read it.
Was
here's me making up for my earlier mistake.
No, was for the lack of a better phrase, this system, call it what you want, government, power, whatever word you want to call the status quo, the thing that we navigate, the political terrain, it is what produces different types of Muslim subject positions. And what I mean by that, it produces the need for the Muslim that agrees and the Muslim that disagrees and the Muslim that's lost and so forth. Like power precedes our leaders. It's not that our leaders come in and we are monitoring their intellectual political growth, because you're right. If we were to do that, you would think that they would have learnt lessons from year 1, 2, 3 up to 5, never mind year 20. And yet we seem to be saying the same thing that we are back then. It's not so much them then, it's that the system only allows certain types of voices and amplifies certain types of voices. And this is a form of control. Like I can't get too deep into it. Maybe I can later on, or maybe this is the right moment. But one of the problems with these government sanctioned narratives about how to deal with Muslims is, I've often said this. We have, I think, a significant misunderstanding about what Islamophobia is. But one of the things that we misunderstand about Islamophobia is that we characterize it as a hatred of fear, something. I don't know, all these negative things.
Like the literal phobia.
Yeah. So I like they want to change the name, some of them, to anti-Muslim hatred.
Yeah.
Like so that's one part of it. So let's say the negative qualities of Islamophobia. But what they struggle to understand is Islamophobia is also an accessible world, which means it produces the space for things like Imam Tawhidi to exist and to be relevant. And Imam Tawhidi is a caricature. I don't want to call him Imam. Yeah. The clown I'm talking about, right? He's a caricature, right? He's so well received and successful because of how absurd his anti-Muslim position is, right? While we're in a turban. And that's at that level. Below those levels, absolutely, they're the type of peak leaders that you want and so forth, the ones that are going to come out and shout, I'm Australian, X, Y, and Z, even though I don't know why that's in part of the debate right now. So I think the hamster and the wheel thing is just that we're repeating the same things because that's the way the system keeps us stuck into this ongoing repetition of a discussion.
So we'll always produce and encourage figures, bodies, reports, initiatives that play into that. It's just going to happen. Someone's going to step up.
Someone's going to step up
into
it, and it's just going to create I heard a long time ago a bunch of people used to take grant money not because of the things that they were producing from those grant money, but because of the networking that you get money, you create an event. Whether the event actually gets kids off the street or stops child violence is secondary to the fact that I've brought in all of these people, high flyers, made contacts, we've had our cucumber cheese sandwiches, whatever, we do our discussions, maybe you fly out. That's the grant industry. Like it creates and produces all of these internal networking and people, but whether it actually translates to things on the ground I haven't seen much. Yeah. I haven't seen much, but Allahu Alam, I'm not, of course I don't want to generalize about every person who's taken different grants for different things. I'm talking about the kind of social cohesion
industry,
stuff. So I think it's all a circle.
So what about then the community that realizes, right? So these are let's say the actors that don't, or that are sort of an inadvertent part of what's been engineered.
First, can I pause you there?
Yeah.
We all realize, they all know. Yeah. Even the ones doing it know. One of the most interesting experiences of my political career is that I would go out and talk and say things such as, I don't know, I'll take the most recent example of Islamophobia. I spoke at ICV's first annual something on Islamophobia. And up until I spoke, nobody mentioned Palestine. I'm sure maybe people were in line to mention it. I came out, I did my thing. I did my radical masks.
Yep.
Right? I did my thing. And this happens to me look, bro, I won't say every single time. It happens a lot of times to me. Let's say people on the other political side, which I don't have a bad personal relationship. Let's call them quote unquote moderate Muslims, the definition of I'm speaking about. Those who are work within government hallways and the systems. Well known. I won't mention their names, well known. They always do this thing. They come up to me, they lean in, they said, I loved your talk. You spoke from the heart. it needed to be said. And I'm always like, well, why don't you say it? Yeah. Like I'm talking about people who are like rubbing shoulders with the highest echelons, right? It always happens to me. I either get that or I get like, oh, that was spoken word. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. And that's because they don't value research in the way I value it. Like I speak not from the heart, I speak from lived experience, awareness, and
knowledge.
I extract what we may call native experience, like the experience of Faraz on the ground. You are my text as much as I'm your text. Don't have to read a book about it. Fanon may help me make sense of the world and its structures, but your life as a Muslim in Sydney helps me more. And so this always got to me. And like I went to the US Embassy way back, got invited to US Embassy, and they invited me because I was a critic, right? This is Muslim community.
Just about to say you sold out hard.
Yeah, invited me because Obama was giving his speech to the Muslim world.
In Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they wanted Muslim feedback.
Right.
And they wanted a variety of Muslims, not just ones that would love it. Yeah.
Jeez, that's a good focus group.
All right. So we had this array of Muslims there. And of course I was like, it's abstract and it's blah. Yeah. Bro, I don't know who it was or what position he said. I was giving it to the US. I go, there's no point in talking about that while Palestine is occupied. And, you know, I was doing my politics. And one of them, again, leaned into me. This is somebody who works for the US Embassy. I swear, wallahi, it was weirdest experience. He put his hands like, you know, if I was in your position, I would have said the same thing. And then he snaps back out and gives me this look like I got here, bro. And then goes and takes a selfie with the other Muslims, yeah, smiling. And so what I mean, Faraz, they know, we know, a lot of us already know. The difference is they believe that the bureaucratic government speak social cohesion, X, Y, and Z language is a pragmatic language that will provide solutions. And we can't speak like we do in the mosque or between each other like that, yeah? So they'll say, yeah, we agree. But then when they go out, they think power, basically they speak white, right? And they think speaking white will get them somewhere. And so therefore, like, sometimes I think it is a lack of political literacy. Sometimes I think they don't know. Sometimes I think they do know, but they also know something else, that white people don't want to hear it.
Right.
And I can't keep my job or make my traction or mobilize unless I speak this bureaucratic government speak language that is erased of any lived experience of the Muslim. I'm sorry, man. I'll say it again. I've said it 100 times. One more time. Australian Muslims, stop complaining about Islamophobia in the way you're complaining about it, because your life is okay in comparison to the vast majority of Muslims around this world. So when you're going out there playing victim to something that the reason why you and angry and I are hurt is not because, bro, somebody said
yelled at a sister or something.
It's not. Now, may Allah protect the Muslims. I'm sure there's violence done in the name of Islamophobia on the street, but the thing that breaks our heart is Palestine. And there's no comparison between the kind of pain we carry. So if you want to talk about this Islamophobia, you've got to bring it back to the overall picture. Before Palestine, or not before, because it's been our whole life, right? We've gone through. Bro, name me a time in the whole 20-odd years I've known you where a Muslim country hasn't been bombed. Name me a time. Name me 1 year. That's been our entire life. Like, watching Muslims die has been our entire adult life. And I'm supposed to worry about the guy at work over a water cooler who does a microaggression. I don't care, and I've never cared. The reason why I fight these small I Islamophobias is because they're used to justify the big I Islamophobia. So I've got no time in the world for those who sever the two and ask me to focus on a small I Islamophobia.
This industry, and I call it that very consciously because I think it's part of that merry-go-round that you mentioned, funding, conferences that have to justify the funding, reports that have to be put out about the conference that justified the funding, social media posts, reels on Instagram with collaborations between different organizations. All of that has to be done. And it's being done, right? And they spend lavish amounts of money on some of these events. They invite sometimes even people like us. I'm sure you've received invitations too, right? And that's where the small I Islamophobia is the boogeyman, and the struggle against it and the victories against it by registering it in some sort of database and then publishing the report is celebrated as some sort of achievement, right?
God, don't get me upset, bro.
Well, I mean, we have to discuss that, right? Because in this moment, let's call it the Palestine moment, the Gaza moment, right?
Yeah.
The Gaza moment. Palestine has been going on forever. It's called the Gaza genocide moment. The last 2 years, this has accelerated. The activities of these sorts of
why? This is a very good
registers
question.
and organizations
Why?
have accelerated. Well, tell us. What, in a nutshell,
Okay, so
why is that the case?
this is my view, my argument. We fight small I Islamophobia precisely to distract Muslims from fighting big I Islamophobia.
Yep.
So it's not like people come up to me, yeah, but small I is important. Okay, I get that. All right. But I'm not asking you not to fight small I. I'm asking you to fight small I.
Focus the energy on the big
yeah,
one. Yeah.
in order to fight big I. Because, there's something amazing about Muslims here. Look, I'll just say this. If you notice any time that anybody speaks about anti-Semitism in this country, if the conversation lasted for a few minutes, half an hour, it eventually will mention the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Right? Which is fair. It's a paradigmic moment in the expression of anti-Semitism. If we talk about anti-blackness in the States, you'll talk about slavery, you'll talk about Jim Crow laws, right? You talk about anti-Indigenous racism in Australia, you're going to talk about white settlement, terra nullius, right? There's always these paradigms. South Africa, apartheid. If you talk about Islamophobia in France, you're going to talk about Algerians and Morocco experience and the colonization. Yep. For some unknown reason, for Muslims, when we speak about Islamophobia, we have no historical paradigm to explain the articulation of Islamophobia, despite the fact we are also witnessing 4.5 million Muslims be killed since the start of the war on terror and 30 million Muslims be displaced. We don't want to link the two and say that
part of a global machinery.
Yeah, it's the reason why small I Islamophobia exists is because of big I Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Right? And you know that because that's why you always reference September 11. And that's why you always reference October the 7th. Because it's always tied to a geopolitical event.
Yep.
So when you separate these two, then we're fighting two types of racism. Now, there's many different ways of fighting racism. I'm going to bring it down to two. I'm going to do that thing, create binaries. There's a type of anti-racism that is effectively for the Australian state and government. It's about building reconciliation, social cohesion, so everybody gets along, right? We all involve ourselves in the war on terror. Until this day, Albanese and Trump we're besties and so forth, great allies, we fought wars together. He said it. We fought wars together. Yeah, where'd you fight those wars?
Yep.
Right? You fought wars together. So we're besties, we're so forth. We participated in this and that, Afghanistan. Like Australia was involved
every war
in quote unquote what they call the liberating of Jerusalem, man.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Okay. Australia's been involved in the colonizing of the Muslim world, and in every war, and in every time there is that type of need to justify Western violence, there will be racism to explain it. So I've always been like, why are you talking about these small I's, these racisms? And let me go back a step for us, because when I talk about these two types, one's reconciliation, the one is self-determination. My job as a Muslim is to survive your violence and prosper and defeat your violence, and if I have to, win despite your violence. Now, survival is self-determination is the key here, and I've always said it. So in order to understand that, let's forgive me for overspeaking.
Yeah.
Let's understand racism as for what we may call its ontology, its characteristic, its disposition, its fitra. Call it what you want, right? What makes it racism? What racism is? If you listen to all of these register type envoy types, the characteristics of racism are things like hatred, ignorance, misrecognition, fear, stereotype, generalization.
Misunderstanding.
I don't need to finish the rest. Everybody in this room can finish that list because you've heard it time and time again. It's all the stuff you hear in HR rooms, in diversity training. It's all that stuff, right? Get along. And if you look at it, it's a huge emphasis on the individual and the individual psychology, and you not to have a distortion in the way you think and see and perceive people, and also to indulge yourself to overcome your biases so you can get into contact with the other, break bread with them and see them like, that we're all beneath our surface, Palestinian, Israeli, Muslim, Jew, Arab, Christian, we're all human, whatever that is, right? Okay, we're all human, but the way we live as human is different. This makes no sense. Elon Musk's human, and so are the kids in Gaza who have been starved. So I argue they're both human, but they both live in conditions that are politicized as a result of violence. So there's no point saying we're both human. We need to know about these conditions. So you get this anti-racism that effectively is about us going out there to reconcile, to play therapist to white anxiety, to educate white ignorance, to translate Islam into a docile, sometimes esoteric, Sufi
personal practice.
Yes, Sufi decorated
Rumi quotes on Tumblr,
right?
that sort of stuff.
Well integrated, unlike and then that reconciliation process is for our safety, apparently. Now, the other type of anti-racism I said is requires us to understand what racism is about, and racism is not about hatred, fear, ignorance, and so forth. These are the characteristics of the racist who has been groomed and socially engineered by racism. It's not the same thing. These are attributes. They're consequences. Yeah, they're not the fitra of racism. The disposition of racism is two things, in my opinion: dispossession and governance. And let me reduce it into simple words: theft and control. They steal land, they steal resources, they steal your labor, they steal your books and your treasures. And then after the fact, they've stolen it, right? They need to create a control around it, because the person you've stolen from, you're worried is going to come back for it.
That's right, of course.
The person that you've displaced, you're worried is going to come back. If you listen to Zionists, everything they say about Hamas is nothing more than a projection of what they do, because they intimately know their own violence. They know. They're the ones that do the raping. They're the ones that do the genocide. They can complain, subhanAllah, they can complain about river to the sea as a genocidal chant while putting up or wearing a necklace of an entire Israel from river to sea, and then talk about a greater Judea and Samaria. No time for it, right? So dispossession, that's what racism is built on. Can't tell the story about Australian racism towards indigenous people without talking about the theft of the land. You can't. What kind of story are you telling? And after dispossession comes governance. You have to control. Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Yeah. Like I steal, and after the thing I've stolen, I'm going to put a fence around it.
So if we translate that to the Muslim experience, the global Muslim experience,
right?
There's colonialism,
There's
which
colonialism,
is the dispossession.
and then there's control and governance of what? Of Muslim resistance. Islamophobia and the war on terror is built on crushing and suppressing any Muslim politics that resists the order where we don't have self-determination.
And anyone who does that at any level
right.
is the other.
So I don't know why you're talking about, they don't understand Islam. They don't care. They're trying to control. And that's why all of our majority Muslim lands have to be controlled, because you can't occupy Palestine. You can't do this level of violence. Guys, we can say whatever we want about what Israel is doing. One of the questions we keep asking ourselves over and over again, Israel is surrounded by Muslim countries. Yeah.
They're all governed. They're all managed.
They're all controlled. We got happy when, 500,000 marched in London or something like that. I don't know what the numbers were. It was huge numbers. Somebody said, let's say it was 300,000, something like that. Bro, 300,000 in London. Can you imagine if Cairo was free? You think it would be 300,000? That's just Cairo. You can name any city you want. You see, the whole thing is repressed because you have to control Muslim polity. That's why Islamophobia exists. It doesn't exist because they've read the Quran wrong. They will distract things like that. They will create narratives about the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, about Islam, about you, about immigration, all of these things to control, right? So you can fight that, sure, because it's part of it. You can fight the disinformation, the fake news, the correct through dawah, but as long as you recognize that you have to fight that in view of the bigger picture. There's no point fighting it so you can live a better life here, right? Because it's irrelevant, because you know what? Our life isn't here, at least it's not that bad. No, it's not at all. Right? So when these reports come and these envoys come, I look at it and I'm like, what are you fighting for? Legitimately, what are you fighting for? Like, I don't get it. Like, that's me, and I don't understand. And then they do these things that everybody in the room knows. Like my 12-year-old kid who hates politics knows. You're saying things to shut everybody up. Yes, there's wars overseas. That's just a one sentence to say, hey, Yassirs of the world, I mentioned it. Yeah, all right. You know, like
lip service, it's not genuine. Yeah.
Yes, of course. The what's happening in Palestine has escalated. Yeah, it's what's happening in Palestine hasn't escalated Islamophobia. What happened in Palestine is Islamophobia. It's not an escalation, right? You can't separate the two. And then he tried and all the rest, and we can get into that later.
Yeah.
So, bottom line is become a psychologist.
Yeah. Is that the only way to explain what's going on at that individual?
No. Look,
Would you say everyone should do?
I was joking.
Yeah,
but it has taught me a little bit.
Well, politics is the only thing that explains it, to be honest. Like,
Psych has taught me about how, like, political psychology is a thing.
Yep.
Psych has taught me how politics can sometimes work in ways that made it more clear for me. Yeah. Like our love for repetition that you spoke about. Subhanallah. This is fascinating for me when I read this. Like, one of the things we have to understand why people have anxiety. Yes, it helps and so forth, but it's also, maladaptive anxiety is when it tries to help too much and makes you stressed out and all the rest. But there's something about anxiety that we keep because it has given us something. I found a lot of the times when I'm dealing with clients or something, there's something about their maladaptive qualities, whether it's anxieties, that they are attached to. Yeah, that's given them something.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and so they can list all the bad things, yeah, the difficult things, but uprooting the good thing is the hard thing. Like me, Muslim communities taking away my happiness, my time, my sanity, yeah. But why am I attached? It's a form of worship and it gives me purpose. So I accept all the bad things because I don't want to let go of this. Yeah, and there's something about that. Like, it's quite amazing in repetition, how our mind always returns to base points, things that we hold on to, things that we don't want to let go of. And the repetition in the community is like they don't want to let go of the idea, certain ideas, certain core ideas, one of which is Australia is...
We're safe here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Australia's innocent. Like, it just needs a minor correction. It doesn't want to let go of that idea.
Because the implication of it being otherwise is so egregious.
Yeah, just a minor correction, just an introduction to a different way of thinking.
Does this explain in some way the difference between the older generations and the younger generations? It doesn't seem to be as much of a problem for us, the younger ones, to let go of the idea that Australia is not that.
Well, I think that makes you look. I never play up citizenry or nationalism or anything like that because
I'm talking about more about the migrant experience. What was given up by that generation to come here and to seek the comfort.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that you're confidently, and I don't confidently Australian in the sense that you've been here, live here, and like I don't go around thinking I have to prove my citizenry or anything. I never carried that ever. I find it absurd. I really do. And I'm not saying that we have to. So the previous generation, I don't know, like. I don't know what they want or what they say and what they do, but you're right. There's a shift.
There is,
But I think for us, we I don't know. I mean, I'm probably a little older than some of you, but like I am definitely older than some of you. But I just think that we think differently about belonging than they do. Yeah. It may have been as simple as I remember my father, who was a very accomplished man. He was always worried about his accent, and like. It seems absurd to me that such an accomplished man would worry about his accent. Maybe he just got framed in a particular way or was very self-conscious in a way.
Oh, the act of leaving something that you had to come somewhere else and then putting that much hope.
And not being fluent maybe in a language, it means not being really self-determined in your surroundings. And maybe we don't have those kind of deeply ingrained concerns. Yeah. So it's easier for us to move on to a next level fight. But that said, some of our generation is shocking.
Of course, every generation will have that. Yeah,
you know, they've fallen over each other just to say how much they love this country. And again, like love it, okay, but you can love whatever you want. I don't like. I don't. Like, I'm not going to judge. I'm bypassing that judgment. Yeah. Right. To that you politicize and weaponize that love against other Muslims. Of course, that's a problem. Yeah. You don't make love in Australia a political standard to say who's good or who's bad or who belongs to a conversation and who doesn't. Yeah, if you want to love a country because of whatever reason, between you and God and yourself in the mirror, I don't care. I find loving countries a bit weird. Yeah, but that's me. Like, all right. But for you to politicize it and step onto a podium to say, hey, here we are. I am the version of the Muslim you need and want and should listen to. And don't worry about the other ones. That's a disservice. Yeah. Yeah, because you're playing into that game that we spoke about.
You would acknowledge, though, that it's gotten a lot less brazen than it was once upon a time. I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be. At least there's been some progress.
You
in
know,
that
you
sense,
say
right?
that, but I'll say this, and it hurts me to say it. Look, if it took a genocide to do that, then
Yeah,
I'm
course,
sorry.
of course.
I find it hard to say,
It's progress.
alhamdulillah, I said
Yeah.
that, welcome.
Yeah.
Like I have to bite, like, look, maybe I'm a recovering narcissist,
Yeah.
man. I have to bite my tongue every time I hear people who bash me from post to pillar say things that I said 5 to 10 years ago,
can imagine
and
that.
now say it now because they have witnessed a genocide. Right? And I'm like, it's not about you. Like, I have to literally do all this therapeutic work on myself. You have me. Sit down, okay? Calm down. But you're like, you're the one who bashed me for that, right? And like, if only you listened. Not that I think it would have stopped the genocide or anything like that, but it would have, at least at the very bare minimum,
You would have carried yourself with more dignity.
the bare minimum. And your growth as a political commentator would have been accelerated.
And as a community leader in some sense, which brings me to, I guess, an important issue that I definitely want to deep dive into before we go to the last part, which will be all about the future and what we do as a community and what now after this, the Gaza moment. We have to talk a little bit about, because it's dominated so much of the attention and hogged so much of the air and the limelight and whatever, and been positioned deliberately, right? If we take the framework that you mentioned, as some sort of seminal moment, the work of the Islamophobia Envoy, right? So I want to stop on that for a little bit. So again, for those who haven't seen some of the previous interactions with Yassir on this, there is a great podcast from, I think, half a year ago, around the time of the election, that you should check out. Boys in the Cave, just check in Boys in the Cave election, Australia, whatever. And we had some good discussions then about the Islamophobia Envoy and that position. It's a political office. It's not a personal issue. Just want to make clear to anyone watching. It's a very well-documented, publicized political office that has been thrown as a bone to the community to show that the government cares. Now, if you didn't inspect your politics and dissect it to the point that you understood some of the points that Yassir has made today about the fact that this is governmentality, it's engineering, it's got a deliberate role to play, then you would think it's progress, right? But clearly, there's massive issues with it. And Yassir, in the simplest way, for someone who may be new to this conversation, right, who may not have some of the background, maybe listening to it now, maybe they've become political after the genocide, and the community is a broad church and we should accept everyone who's sort of gotten active and started thinking about these issues. How would you explain to them in the shortest way possible what your criticism is of the office of the Islamophobia Envoy? Like, what's the problem in a nutshell?
It's a distraction.
Yeah.
Shortest way. It's a distraction.
Because what? Because why?
Okay, so you as a Muslim sense, your senses, your very being recognizes, after witnessing and watching a significant amount of violence, this does things to you. It does things to every human who witnesses this type of violence. Just seeing the aerial shots of Gaza in and of itself is terrifying. Never mind watching what happens to Palestinians. Then you couple it with all the kind of narratives and rubbish and violent rhetoric online and elsewhere. Then you attach it to government and politicians delaying a call for a ceasefire, being pro-Israel all the way, right? Then you see the protests and there's a rallying within you to do something, and this is the Gaza moment that you speak of. And then you see the insults against your religion and your deen and your people, and then you hear about sisters having the hijab ripped off and all the rest. You, without having any political knowledge, can absorb an idea that the Muslim is under attack. Yeah? That the Muslim is disliked, hated, whatever you want, is targeted. Now, what I mean by distraction is, in order for understand the reasons why we're targeted, to understand the reasons why we're targeted, is the best way to help defend ourselves, or to build a generation, or to build a future where we can defend ourselves. Yeah? And that's what I mean. You have to return it back to the big I Islamophobia, because that's why we're targeted. Faraz is not oppressed by Islamophobia. Faraz may be subjugated to Islamophobia because Faraz's equivalent back in the Muslim world is oppressed. And they see you as a natural ally. In order to do the violence there, just like in order to maintain the violence on Palestine, you have to repress the entire Muslim world. Because the Muslim on the street won't tolerate it. If we had, quote unquote, a proper democracy where the sentiment of the people, no country has this.
Of course.
But the sentiment of the people was captured, or if it was run by the Sharia, or if it had the sentiment, or if there was like whatever, if there was an expression, it wouldn't be happening. We would either die fighting, but we would be fighting, or we'd be liberated. What we won't be doing is watching it on our phones. So you can't oppress one group of people unless you also subjugate all their allies. And so for me, if you're going to focus on the subjugation of first world Muslims,
without centering why it happens in the
without
first place,
it's a distraction.
Yeah.
And what will happen is what's happened in the last 20 years. They'll move on to another country. There'll be another political paradigm. And then we've gone Iraq, Afghanistan. Yeah. Palestine has always existed. There's been mass violence in every continent, right? It happens everywhere. And then all the time we come back to it. And we make this separation. We protest over here for the persecution of Muslims overseas. And then we talk about Islamophobia here. And this guy comes out and says, I've spoken to Palestinians, and there's a difference between anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia. Spare me, man. I promise you, if you met a Palestinian that came in and said, Al-Aqsa, we have to create jihad against... If he met that Palestinian who echoed and mirrored and articulated Hamas, he wouldn't be saying, I've listened to the Palestinians. He wouldn't be saying that. We know, I know, we all know, you know, that you've chosen this because it's a way out for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the worst part about it is you've lent in on, I've listened to Palestinians. Yeah, you made it sound like you're just following orders. You're not following the Palestinian order, because if you were listening to any description of what racism is, we don't need to separate Islamophobia from anti-Palestinian racism. Is there particular contours or ways racism articulates itself that's unique to Palestine? Of course there is. Sure. But is it separate from an overall broader racism? Absolutely not. Like, Islamophobia is attached to anti-indigenous sentiments. It's attached to anti-Semitism even, because it's built on a hierarchical model of the modern world. You don't need to separate it. You separated it to make it easier. And then you gave us this one line, and this is the thing, everybody in the room knows what that line is doing. They know, I know, you know, and they know that we know, but we shut up. Well, I don't, they do. Because they recognize part of the game for this to go on is that we have to deal with the Palestine problem. How do I get the money and deal with the Palestine problem? Yep. How do I do all this and deal? The Palestinians said anti-Palestinian racism is different. They know, I know, you know, bro. And the thing is, they rely on those of us who either don't know or don't want to know. Yep. Yeah. So I recently bumped into helping a bunch of Muslims at a MSA, and they were told, focus on Islamophobia, not anti-Palestinian racism. Leave that up for other. And then when you've realized where the money's coming from, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to ask you all a question, to whoever's watching and to you first and foremost. Please explain to me how it is possible that an anti-racism organization is getting its funding from the Australian government that is doing that racism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
that is the $1 million question.
Explain to me how that is not going to corrupt the process.
Absolutely.
The only thing that Australian anti-racism will want is social cohesion, which basically is temper any conflict. So at one level, this is amazing. We go out there to disrupt the streets, to bring attention to the genocide, right? We disrupt our campuses by encampments. Yeah. That's our anger. Yeah. We disrupt through all sorts of social media activities and campaigning. We're disrupting. It's the opposite of social cohesion. You're saying, I refuse to be quiet. I refuse to pretend there's no violence. And then we get an anti-racism that's funded to basically...
To do just that, yeah.
Yeah, to do just that. Yeah. Sometimes they call it progressive nationalism. Yeah. And then they'll do this clever little thing that they do. And I'll pause here. Yeah. And that clever little thing is like, it's okay to dissent, it's okay to argue. We have to respect each other. Everyone needs to live, and so forth and whatnot. Bro, it's a scam, bro. It's not even just a distraction. It is a betrayal of our amana. You've only got one job in this current moment. You got one job, and that is to bring awareness to Gaza.
Yeah. Be the voice of our people.
Right? Now, I will accept you can bring awareness to another genocide, or another equal conflicting form of violence, say Sudan, and then I recognize that. But to talk about you and our life here, stop. Just honestly.
Yep.
And then when you add that they're getting paid for it, stop. Like, so massive distraction and pacifying in the sense to remove us, because remember what is dispossessing us from. They're dispossessing land over here, but ultimately they're dispossessing our self-determination, because logically speaking, ethically speaking, spiritually speaking, if we were free without consequence or policing, we would not sound the way we sound now.
Yeah.
We just wouldn't.
So it's a great perspective. Very, very well framed as well, I think. Very, very useful. I want to use whatever time we've got left, and I'm conscious of time as well, because you have a conference tomorrow to speak at. We could really speak all night, as you said. What does this mean for us going forward, right? Want to try and articulate sort of something that resembles, in your view, a way forward for the community after this moment, keeping in mind that these distractions, these organized distractions, are not going anywhere. They're going to be there. They're going to continue to be there, right? As long as there's a state called Australia, which is part of that capital Islamophobia, and will continue to be because it's part of the global architecture, these sorts of distractions will be there. I'll be very interested to see when this Islamophobia envoy disappears. I'm making dua that it does so soon. It's definitely a distraction we don't need, but it wouldn't surprise me that as a token gesture to our community, it continues to be something that helps pacify community anger. But I want to sort of understand your perspective on the broader way forward for the community. There's a huge rabbit hole that we went down previously on that other show, which I won't take us down, but I want you to refer to it and to see your sort of perspective. I'm talking about the voting issue, right? And your good friends.
Is that still around? Do we still believe in it?
Well, I mean, I'm guess there are. I'm sure there are some people.
I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not
no. Genuinely. I'm sure there are.
And 6 months is a long time in my life.
Yes,
bro.
6 months. Yes,
5 months.
right.
Yeah, May. Yeah. Was it May? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it still like?
It was in May. Yes, that's right. October now. End of
Okay,
October.
sorry,
So,
please. I went down a rabbit hole.
It's a huge rabbit hole. But because it's not as timely, I probably won't go down there. But from the perspective of what the community should do then going forward, right? And you've got like a fascinating and quite detailed, when you put it down in writing, almost like a mental framework for how as a community we should learn from this moment and do certain things. And I'm not going to go down the entire list, right? But as a broad thesis.
So the broad thesis.
What does this moment call of us?
Yeah, look, I've always been about self-determination. You want to fight Islamophobia, it has to be self-funded, community-funded. You got to create your own businesses, economies, media platforms. You got to create your own base of power. You've got to. One of the things I don't like about our community leadership is that they're very repetitive and they just repeat stuff that we look. There's a difference between having political literacy and being well versed in political conversations. Being well versed in political conversation means you've listened to a podcast or two like this one, or you've done some studying, or you've rubbed shoulders with the right people, right? Or you've been invited to multiple X, Y, and Z events, and you learn the language. Right, and then so you can learn the conversation. We have plenty of that. We have plenty of people, for example, repeat day and time and very click. Oh, the West is hypocritical. Well, and like the constant necessity to compare ourselves to the Jewish community. But this is what they do. But this is how we were treated. It continue. It's all repetitive. Like, look, anyone who says the West is hypocritical, for straight away it's a red flag for me. I'm like, well, I don't know how much political literacy you actually have. I am aware that you're aware of the conversation. Now, political literacy for me is not just being able to repeat what is known, it's the ability to create what is yet to be known by reading power, reading politics. We have far less of that. And so we have to create institutions that create those type of thinkers, those type of minds, not people who continue to repeat things. I don't need to, look, I said, recovering narcissist. If I go into a conference and somebody comes out there and they say something so banal, so repetitive, we're all Australian and they shouldn't treat us like this. And somebody in the background goes, I lose it, bro. I'm like because it's been said for 20 years. You have to pick up right now that this constant repetition is your entrapment. Yeah. You continually saying the West is hypocritical is your silencing. It's not a radical moment to say what everyone is saying, right? You've got to figure out how the West use its moral, ethical, Christian-based, liberal-based, whatever you want to call it, as diplomatic cover for horrendous violence. And it's always done it. Appealing to that cover,
and justifying it, legitimizing it. Yeah.
that somehow it will reverse its violence, means I don't know how much of Western history you've read.
Yeah. SubhanAllah. What an incredible point.
Right? So I'm like, we keep saying it. And like, what's the magical number here when you think the quote unquote Western leader, the West, is going to say, I am being hypocritical. Maybe I should stop.
Thank you for the nasiha.
You're like, but it's not for them. It's not. It's just the way we've been trained to be that cyclical, repetitive distraction. Like how many times, like one more thing, like when you say something like Islamophobia has increased by X%, it is such a meaningless statement, man. Well, first of all, there's confusion between Islamophobia and the Islamophobic incident. There's a confusion. Like there's a confusion between Islamophobia as a system, as a architecture, and the act that somebody does.
The small I act.
Yeah. That act, Islamophobia is not equal to catalogue of acts. So Islamophobia doesn't increase or decrease. It's the architecture. What increases and decreases are incidences. And notice when they increase when they fear our resistance. That's when they increase.
Incredible. Yeah.
Right? They don't increase when, like this idea that, bro, we've got Muslims in every, when we first started, I know we're running out of time. When we first started, we wanted what we got now. I remember they wanted a Muslims in media. We got a gold Logie Walid Ali. We wanted Muslims who were successful in sports. We got Basha Houli, Usman Khawaja. We did Sonny Bill Williams. Yep. We wanted Muslims who were in the arts. We got that. We wanted Muslims in parliaments. We got that. What did that stop? What did it stop?
Yep.
And now after all of those lessons, we're still in 2025 saying we just need a Muslim in parliament. Because ultimately it's repetition.
With hijab. We got that.
Oh, we got that one. Yeah.
We got that.
It's all repetition. Repetition. And the reason why it keeps us, right? Because that's the way the system works. Yeah. It solves its own problem by letting you chase another problem. And while the actual mechanisms of violence go unabated, and not only unabated, our taxes pay for it, our consumptions consume it, and we benefit from it as first world citizens. We benefit from the war on terror. Like telling that to Muslims is very hard for them. Our security, our living standard, our super, our cars that we drive, all benefited from the world colonial, the land we're on. Yeah, and I'm supposed to worry about this envoy that comes and makes me want to think that my obligation in life, and this is the most dehumanizing thing ever, is to continually try to convince people that I am worthy of acceptance. No, I'm worthy of my fight. I'm worthy of my fight. And if I as a Muslim look around here in this world together, my fight is not acceptance. My fight is to liberate my people. What if I am booed, kicked, hissed, cussed, fired for that fight? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And if you can't lose all of that, the best you can do is go home. And I'll say this. There was a time you and I and everyone else, we wished our imams and our mashaykh became political. Because I used to go to MSAs and all they wanted to talk about
what you wish for.
Came about marriage. Talk about marriage and the character and the seerah of the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him. Beautiful. And then they became political. Now we've got 3 million media releases later. Okay. I'm like, please go back. All right, please. Yeah.
Stop this politics stuff.
Right. I was wrong. Yeah. Khair, inshallah.
Wow. I mean, it's hard to go into further detail about the sort of blueprint and framework after such a profound note. It really is a very appropriate note to end on. But I think you've given us some food for thought. And I think this needs a greater unpeeling. And we've said a while ago, somehow that's actually funny. 1 year ago, we were having this discussion in some brother's garage. When you were here in Sydney last, we're going to be there again, inshallah, in a couple of days' time. And in some ways, I think people have taken steps towards that, right? Our own conversation, self-funded, independent. I mean, very, very frankly, this tiny little initiative that we have well, alhamdulillah, it's had an impact bigger than its size, Stand for Palestine. It's sort of like that, right? Like we're inspired in some ways by those exhortations to just stop waiting for someone to do something. Just do it, right? Just do it. Create some independence, chuck in some money as a group of friends, do something. Create conversations, bring on people who know what they're talking about. And in some ways, it's like a very, very, very small sort of example of that. And there's been many others in the community as well. I've certainly noticed, I think, I don't know what you think, but I've certainly noticed a tightening in the community of this need for like a ecosystem of Muslim organizations and businesses and whatever, with all of their shortcomings and all of their contradictions, many of which you pointed out. You have them in the case of imams and sheikhs. We have them in the case of all the businesses and charities and whatever that we interact with and work with. There's shortcomings everywhere, and the shortcomings are in us. They're a reflection of us as people, as individuals, our personal shortcomings. But at least there's something there, right? There's a desire to work with whatever we've got, as imperfect as it might be. What's been your experience?
No, I agree. I mean, look.
And the Islamic schooling system is a good example. Like you would be an idiot to call it perfect or developing the sort of kids that we would want to see from an Islamic pedagogical perspective. But it's there, like the sort of solidarity and the solace that we can find in those difficult moments is something I think worth noting.
I should note that, and it's not. I'm not blaming you for this. I should note the type of conversations I typically involve myself in or get asked to. The questions I get asked is to identify what's going wrong, where the problems may be, and that's where I delve into. But that doesn't mean I don't observe what's also going right. Absolutely, things have changed. Whether it took a genocide to not, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala decrees.
Has his ways,
it is what it is, and I'm not. There's a reason why I use the word narcissism or ego, because I'm fighting myself. Like
we're all part of that fight.
Why should I? Don't take credit. I learned it from somewhere. Just because I learned it early doesn't mean I'm better, right? So things are changing. The things that you're speaking about, I do think that, because I've always been, despite what people said, lack of solution, I've always been about self-determination. What that looks like is strange, because in humanity, it's like telling you what's the solution to parenting. You can have principles, but you have to day to day. Your kid does something, and you're not
going to come with a Gantt chart for what that looks like.
Exactly, right? So self-determination is a principle. What it actually concretely looks like,
everyone has to work out together,
and it will collapse, it will grow, it will happen. So instead of trying to get into media, make your own media like this. This is like, I stopped wanting to and writing for mainstream. I might get an invitation here or there, and there's no part of me that wants to do it. Like, I would have to be convinced by some, or I'll be like, they're going to pay me, and I'll use that money for something that helps my community.
So we've got to come out like a MAGA movement, make Yassir great again, but this time on alternative media.
So I don't, even academia, I've completely fallen out of love with it. Not that I was in love with it, but I think it's useless for what I want. And I'm not saying it's useless in and of itself. For what I want, it's useless. So I do think there's growth, intellectual growth. I should say sometimes decolonizing the mind is overemphasized and it becomes a catch cry. The real trick is, like, I wanted to leave Australia as an act of protest because of my taxes, not because of the lifestyle. Australia was worse than Dubai or Emirates or anything like that. I've struggled with knowing that my taxes
are going towards.
I struggled with that. So I had to offset in my mind, okay, well, if I do this, do that. The real struggle is what your labor will be, right? Yes, I think we may be there, but unless we liberate our labor, right? Unless we liberate your day job, okay? So I moved away from academia. I didn't have the best job, but it was a good job. Like I had my heaviest week when I was working at university, was 9 contact hours. That's one semester, 9 contact hours for the whole week teaching. Of course, you do research, you write, meetings here, there.
Coffees, lattes, talking on Facebook to people. Most
of that. At school, it's a 38-hour week, bro. Okay, maybe not that much, but you know what I mean? Like, but it's all Muslim. It's all Muslim kids. And yes, I'm helping them become happy laborers in a capitalist system because that's the way education's built. But every now and then, yeah, I'm helping somebody, and I feel like I'm building a world that will make it safer for my kids and for us. And it's not that and I don't care if I am, don't get me wrong, I'm not apologizing for this. It's not that I'm Muslim centric, but being Muslim, as opposed to, I'm talking about our deen is central, but being politically Muslim, what I mean by that, has become the vehicle from which I understand my politics. I can't separate the two. And I don't think, to answer your question, we are getting better, but we have to keep thinking about financial, education, liberty, right? Before all else. If you're still asking them to accept you or that you're one of them, you'll be asking for a long, long time. Because the structure of racism after dispossession is governance. And the best way to govern a people is to stand over them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they ask you the question, where are you really from? That's not an inquisition, a curiosity. It's a power play.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't need to. I asked that question.
Yeah.
And as so far as much as you answer it, and I think it was Homi Baba that says, this is the why I really disliked the MVM stuff.
Yeah.
It's always the colonized and the subjugated that perpetuate and produce the values of their colonizer. It's always us that make democracy sound
better than it is. Yeah.
Better, I walk into a politics class
So
that I'm
true,
teaching,
so
and
true.
the non-Muslims are smashing into democracy. They're the ones critiquing it, it's ripping it apart. And
Muslims are pointing out its virtues, right?
and we're talking about like a textbook version, and we just have to vote. And when we participate, we'll get into parliament, and they'll listen. And I'm like, and then they always act like there's some. They'll always act like there's some enigma that you've missed, Yassir. Like you've beyond the surface.
Because we haven't done it right. Yeah.
Beyond the surface, there's some hidden wisdom that if you spent a time listening, you will crawl.
We haven't lobbied well. We haven't. Our campaigns are bad. You know,
that's the thing. When you talk that bureaucratic, government language, to go back to this quote, you are producing and normalizing and naturalizing these values.
And a system that.
Right? You're normalizing it. And so I don't care if you if you convinced everybody that democracy is actually not subverted by corporate, military, geopolitical interests and is actually nothing more than the echo of the Australian population, you have not only betrayed Muslims, you've betrayed Australians, because the banks have more of a say than the average Australian. And you're out there telling us that Parliament is a chamber of sentiment. You who's received the peaky end of this violence. Like, incredible. You don't know what to... So...
Cheers.
To go back to this solution, decolonizing, yes, and that, but until we liberate our labor, and which is to say, what I mean by that, I don't mean like you can work wherever you want to work, but...
Are you advocating cash jobs, Yassir?
I just feel like I feel like all of us will feel like we're doing something if we're working for a world we want to live in.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, not a world that is harming us. Yeah. Like that's the reason that would drive my mind. I'm like, 40 cents of my dollars go into the taxes, and then there's all these.
Well, Sheikh Marx was right. Yeah. Like, I mean, the theory about labor and disenchantment,
consumption, and then I'm like, and then I'm feeding my kids this because I'm tired, processed food, sugar laden. Okay, I have to squeeze the ibadah and worship after hours. You know how hard it is to get my kid to do his one Arabic on Zoom after he's come from school and stuff like, and all his mates are playing Fortnite and Roblox and everything, and I'm like, no, bro, this whole like I can't build this world, and I'm exhausted, bro.
Yeah, of course, we all are.
Right? And then on top of all of that, your health starts to deteriorate because it's just not natural. It's not normal for us. We are here to worship, to discover his treasures. And instead, I'm stuck in a brick and mortar box, driving into a metal box, going to a bigger box, right? And then I wonder why I've got anxiety.
And it's on mortgage. And
right? I wonder why I got anxiety, because I'm not participating in what I feel like my natural disposition wants, which is discovery, worship, and if need be, jihad.
Service.
Need be jihad in the name of something just.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I think, notwithstanding, I mean, take it back to the question that I asked in this.
No.
I think for the audience more so is that I think notwithstanding that the details aren't there and you don't have a detailed project plan that is ready for submission, I think it's still a very profound paradigmatic shift to come to people and say self-determination is the key. because I actually think a lot of people can figure it out after that, right?
Yeah.
It's that thought bubble that we all have in our head. Isn't this what we should be doing? Isn't this the way that we should be going? But for someone to actually connect the dots and then say, no, this is actually, yes, this, push it down, figure it out for yourself. Your community, your business, your initiative that can live in its, in its own world, on its own 2 feet, connect with others, push the community down this direction, right? I think that's powerful. I think that's an important push that we all need. And everyone is in some way, shape or form who's concerned about the genocide and has been in this high school is talking that language. Like people really, really are. Like they just don't know how to articulate it as eloquently as that.
I think we also know one thing, and everyone says this, doesn't matter where your political literacy is. We all know the dollar speaks.
Yeah, 100%, of course.
Like,
yeah.
So self-determination, like a lot of people want self-determination in the conceptual, abstracted, intellectual sense. But I think it also means
mental freedom. Yeah,
it also means economic freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to figure out how to give Muslim jobs that help Muslims build the world they want to belong to, and a world not just for Muslims, like a world for everyone. Yeah. Like I think we have values that will attract
people
because they will help people. You talk about Islamic psychology. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, bro. Well, maybe tomorrow or the day after I'll figure it out. But. And I know I'm over time. So
no, that's fine.
Yeah. I'll close on this from me. I remember I went to a conference a couple of years ago. I think you were there. I can't remember. Were you there? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But Billy was there.
Right.
And it was about providing health for mental health.
Yep.
Support for Islamic schools or something. I got asked a question outside about how we can fight anxiety. And because people are anxious and like I think somebody, I don't know why the conversation's pinned on anxiety. And then they're like from an Islamic psychology perspective. And Taban, I'm not a psychologist expert. Full stop. Never mind Islamic psychology. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know. I've got to wait.
Right.
It seems like it's just a bunch of translations of psychology into Islamic language.
Right.
At the moment, could be wrong. Maybe some profound thing that I haven't figured out yet. Right. But from an Islamic paradigm, I asked this question: what if anxiety is just honestly, it's your fitra, your anxiety, your soul screaming because you're not meant to live like this? Yeah. Then is the solution to solve it, right? Or to temper it, or to manage it, or to regulate it, right? Or to recognize also that an Islamic psychology response would be to combat the world and the structure and the economy that produces it? Or are we always going to be trying to patch up symptoms? Yeah? Like that for me is a question Islamic psychology has to answer. Yeah. So but they don't answer that because that's where you get paid, man.
Yeah,
that's where you go to your job. Yeah. You deal with it after. And this is what capitalism does. And I call it the coffee paradigm, right? I don't drink coffee, and I sometimes do. And then I've got people around me, if they don't get their cup of coffee, they're like, oh, I need a coffee. I can't wake up. They won't work with coffee. Coffee only solves the problem that coffee produces. That is the most perfect capitalist product imaginable. Right? It only solves the problem it produces. And we have a bunch of industries that only solve the problem it itself produces. Yeah. And I think, Allahu Alam, I could be wrong, psychology is kind of like only solving the problem that this system produces. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I can do that. Yeah. That's what I'm paid for. Yeah. But my politics is like, no, I can lap, bro. I've got to say more.
Global liberation, yeah.
Anyway,
Alhamdulillah. It's been
Let's
awesome.
go get some coffee.
Awesome. So food for thought, stop drinking coffee, everyone. You are literally drugging yourself and helping sustain an industry that you do not need. But unfortunately,
look, there's an aesthetic to it. Don't get me wrong; it tastes good and all that. There's a pleasure in it. But when it's treated as some type of solution for me to work, that's
it. Actually, is a perfect example. Yeah. Really, is a perfect example. But that and the broader sort of the framework that you've helped us sort of or introduced to us, I think there's a lot of food for thought there. And people should really, really unpack this with others around them, have the conversations that are needed. What does that mean for them? What does that mean for their career? What does that mean for where they work, how they work, what they aspire to in this country, back home in our lands, whatever the case may be. So really, thank you, Yassir. It's been wonderful, and I'd love to unpeel some of this and the voting issue, but that's all for another time. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming here, and have a great time at the conference. And we'll talk to you again very, very soon, inshallah.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Dear brothers and sisters, for all of you watching, remember the book is Radical Skins, Moderate Masks. Get it online. If you type it in, you'll find it. And Yassir has also explained it in several other podcasts and shows. So there's some really good explanations of it. It's a really very profound work, which builds on sort of his learning, as an anti-racism scholar, Islamophobia expert, and a general sort of philosopher of politics. Thank you for joining us once again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that funky stuff. There'll be some little notification bells and things coming up to remind you to do all that stuff. Please do it so we can keep going and keep having interesting conversations like this. It's been an absolute blast. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.